up on this Tuesday edition of Newsline at noon, the investigation into deceased Sewol-ho ferry owner Yoo Byung-eun is picking up speed, with his last remaining confidant turning himself into prosecutors. Races for parliamentary seats representing constituencies in Seoul and its vicinity are too close to call on the eve of Korea's largest ever by-elections that will determine the fate of some big-name politicians. Plus, Washington shrugs off North Korea's threat of nuclear attacks on the White House and Pentagon as mere inflammatory rhetoric. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. It's noon Tuesday, July 29th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Ju.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this afternoon: the largest by-election in Korea's history is now just one day away.
And to drum up support, candidates hit the campaign trail running this morning. Joo Byung-eun reports.
Candidates in Wednesday's by-elections have just one more day to appeal to voters on the campaign trail, and the rival parties are leaving nothing to chance. They'll be out all day shaking hands and rallying up support, particularly in the races in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province, which are neck and neck. The opposition candidate has been boosted in Seoul's Dongjakbi district and two constituencies in Suwon, Gyeonggi-do province, after unifying under one candidate. The Conservative Party has attacked the move as political collusion, but the main opposition party and the minor opposition, Justice Party, claim the alliances were formed by the candidates on their own accord. For both rival parties, the stakes in the by-election are high. A positive outcome for the Saenuri Party would provide a further boost for newly elected chairman Kim Moo-sung, while a win for the main opposition party would do the same for co-chairs Kim Han-gil and An Chol-soo, who have led the party since forming it in March. A loss would have the opposite effect for the duo. They handpicked the candidates in many of the race's more important districts, generating criticism inside and out of the party. A total of 15 parliamentary seats are up for grabs in Wednesday's by-election, with the Saenuri Party already holding 147 spots in the 300-seat parliament. The opposition hopes to minimize ruling party gains. Joo Byung-eun, Arirang News.
Now turning to the latest developments on the investigation into April's ferry disaster, and things are beginning to pick up steam quite a bit now. The latest we know is that a very close aide to the now deceased owner of the ferry has turned himself in to the authorities after weeks on the run.
Yang Hwe-jeong is the last of those suspected of helping Yoo Byung-eun evade the authorities to be brought under custody. Prosecutors believe he could hold the key to finding out what Korea's most wanted man was doing in the weeks and days and hours before his mysterious death. Connie Lee has more.
After 2 months of being on the run, 55-year-old Yang Hwe-jeong, described as one of the closest aides to the deceased owner of the sunken Sewol-ho ferry, has turned himself in. Yang appeared at the Incheon district prosecutor's office this Tuesday morning and now faces charges of helping Yoo Byung-eun evade authorities. Yang, who also worked as a driver for Yoo, was last seen at the end of May on the surveillance camera in Incheon, southern Korea, the same city where Yoo was found dead, and around the same time Yoo is believed to have died. Authorities believe Yang holds answers to what Yoo Byung-eun was doing right before he passed away. Yang's surrender comes one day after his wife and another close aide to Yoo Byung-eun turned themselves in, and a few days after Yoo's eldest son was arrested. Yoo's younger son still remains at large. The hunt for the Yoo family is all in the name of finding the exact cause of the deadly ferry accident that killed more than 300 people. Even President Park Geun-hye has said the Yoo Byung-eun family was a root cause of the disaster. However, the real causes of the accident are still unclear. Lawmakers at the National Assembly, because of partisan differences, have not been able to pass a bill aimed at coming up with the real answers of what made the ferry sink on April 16th. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Now, North Korea has been making more threats towards its arch enemy, the United States. Pyongyang says it will launch a nuclear attack on Washington and U.S. military bases if it ever feels threatened. The U.S. government, however, barely paid much notice, only saying it'd be better for North Korea to try a more peaceful tact next time around. Yoo Byung-eun reports.
When asked about North Korea's recent threat to drop a nuclear bomb on the White House, the U.S. State Department fell short from providing a detailed answer.
I had not actually seen that report with everything going on. I think it's fair to say that that kind of inflammatory rhetoric is not a way to move towards a place in the world.
The White House also declined to comment on Pyongyang's threat made during a large rally on Sunday by North Korea's top military official who accused Washington of raising tensions on the peninsula.
Our military will launch nuclear-armed rockets towards the White House and U.S. military bases.
The latest threat comes amid criticism within the U.S. of the Obama administration's approach toward Pyongyang. It centers around strategic patience and holding off on direct talks with the North Korean regime until concrete steps to denuclearize are taken. But North Korea appears to be hunkering down.
By mentioning the possibility of nuclear war, North Korea wants to show it will not be dragged around by the U.S. instead of showing North Korea's nuclear capabilities. This shows it's frustrated that the nuclear issue is not being addressed or resolved.
Former U.S. State Department official Joel Witt also told the Joseonilbo on Monday that leaving North Korea alone over the past 6 years has been a mistake. He said it's time the U.S. open up high-level dialogue channels with Pyongyang. Witt also warned of North Korea's growing military threats, saying it will most likely finish preparations by the end of the year on a rocket more powerful than the Unha-3 rocket that was test-fired 2 years ago. Yoo Byung-eun, Arirang News.
Now, when South Korea announced back in March that it had selected Lockheed Martin's F-35 as its next-generation fighter, concerns were raised over the jet's safety and performance. The voices of dissent have only strengthened in the 4 months since because of a number of incidents. A New York Times editorial published on Monday said the F-35 has experienced several technical problems since its development began 14 years ago, most recently an engine failure at an Air Force base in Florida just last month. The Daily sided with experts who said it would be sensible for the US to either buy fewer F-35s or halt purchases altogether until operational testing is completed in the year 2019. South Korea announced in March that it would buy 40 F-35s in the coming years at an expected cost of nearly $6.8 billion. Korea and Japan plan to resume talks early next month on fishing inside their respective exclusive economic zones. A high-level official at Korea's Fisheries Ministry says Seoul has requested Tokyo to ease restrictions on hairtail fishing within the Japanese zone and to increase the amount of allowed hairtail catch from the current 2,100 tons to 8,000 tons. Now, Tokyo, on the other hand, wants a permanent permission for its recently enlarged mackerel fishing boats to operate within Korea's EEZ. Negotiations for the 12-month fishing season starting this July were halted without an agreement in late June, forcing fishermen from both sides to retreat to their respective waters. Now, some newly discovered documents show that Japan did not return major cultural assets to Korea that it had agreed to give back under a 1965 treaty that normalized the two nations' bilateral ties. According to the documents obtained by Seoul-based Yonhap News on Monday, Japan only sent a third, or around 1,400, of the Korean property in question. The cultural properties that had come back home were those that Japan considered to have a low historical or artistic value, and the documents came from a ruling of the Tokyo High Court last week that upheld an appeal by the central government not to disclose 48 diplomatic documents related to this 1965 treaty. It said the release of the records could have a negative effect on Japanese diplomacy.
And time now for a look through the international headlines on this Tuesday. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim standing by at the news center.
Eunice, it appears more sanctions are headed Russia's way this week as the US and certain members in the EU are certain Moscow is providing weapons to the separatists that shot down that awfully ill-fated Malaysia Airlines Flight 17.
Right, Mark. Discussions for the revved-up sanctions also come as pro-Russia rebels blocked international experts and police from the crash site for the third day in a row now. Leaders are hoping for results by pumping up the pressure on Russia. Song Ji-sun reports.
The leaders of the United States and a handful of European nations have made clear their determination to act against Russia. Following a conference call on Monday, U.S. President Barack Obama, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, French President François Hollande, British Prime Minister David Cameron, and Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi agreed to place additional, as yet unspecified, sanctions on the Russian economy this week. Western leaders are increasingly certain that Russian President Vladimir Putin has strong links to downing of Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 due to his support for pro-Russia separatists in eastern Ukraine. The leaders also call for unrestricted access to the MH17 crash site. Washington says its intel shows Moscow is continuing to transfer heavy weaponry and fighters across the border to aid pro-Russia separatists and has stationed Russian troops near the border in possible preparation for a further incursion into Ukraine. European leaders made clear last week that they were willing to target financial, defense and energy sectors of Russia's economy, but some European countries remain wary of backing new measures that could restrict trade across entire industries and hurt the European economy. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Following a somber Eid al-Fitr that saw 9 children die on the Muslim holiday, Gaza continued to be pounded into early morning Tuesday. Israeli airstrikes targeted the Al-Sharouk building in central Gaza City, which houses several media companies. Hamas said its TV and radio stations were marked. Gaza's Interior Ministry added the house of a Hamas political leader was shot at, causing damage but no casualties. The widespread night of attacks comes as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had warned Israel it needed to prepare itself for a long conflict, crushing any hopes for a sustainable peace agreement as the fighting enters its 4th week. On Monday afternoon, 9 children who were out playing on the Muslim holiday were killed after explosions erupted at the Shanti refugee camp. Soon after, a hospital was also hit in a separate incident. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon reiterated an earlier call by the United Nations for an immediate, unconditional humanitarian truce in Gaza, demanding both sides to end the violence in the name of humanity. A huge plume of smoke was spotted in Libya as a fuel tank fire spread to a second tank in Tripoli's main petrol distribution facility. Government officials believe rival militias started the blaze in their ongoing struggle for control of the country's main airport that has killed nearly 100 people in the past week of fighting alone. Libya's national oil company said the fire was out of control. The first tank blaze was nearly contained, an oil company spokesman said, when fighting reignited, causing crew to withdraw from their operations. The government fears a humanitarian and environmental disaster is at hand and appealed for international help as nearby residents were urged to evacuate. McDonald's in China has pulled Big Mac and Chicken McNuggets for the time being as its meat supplier is getting major heat for unsanitary practices. The Illinois-based parent company of Shanghai Hu Seafood has recalled all of its products from the market. A TV report had accused of and showed Hu Seafood employees mixing expired meat with fresh products and forging production dates, causing an uproar from the fast food chains they serve. Parent company OSI Group said the food safety scandal was absolutely inconsistent with the group's standards and promised to review all of its China plants.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on NEWSLINE at Noon with Mark Broom and Jin-ju.
I'm Jin-ju.
Market researcher, strategy analytics, said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about...
Korea's main stock market continues to soar for the third straight trading day on this Tuesday, hitting yet another high for the year, thanks largely to strong foreign buying. Kim Ji-yeon tells us what made foreign investors turn their eyes to Korean stocks.
Korea's benchmark Kospi reached the 2060 mark within 30 minutes of trading on Tuesday morning, replacing the yearly high for the third straight trading day. The rise is mainly due to strong foreign buying. Foreign investors have bought nearly $550 million worth of Korean shares over the past week. That's the highest among the 7 emerging markets in Asia, according to data compiled by Bloomberg and Seoul-based Haitian Securities. Until now, foreign investors were reluctant to buy Korean shares due to the country's heavy reliance on the Chinese economy and uncertainties over Korea's economic policy direction. However, these two weaknesses have somewhat been resolved, as China recorded growth of 7.5% in the second quarter of this year, buoyed by stimulus measures from Beijing. In addition, Korea's economic plans, including a $40 billion stimulus measure laid out by the country's new finance minister, Choi Kyung-han, show the government's willingness to be active in revitalizing the economy, washing away some of the uncertainties felt by foreign investors.
The main difference between the new economic team and the previous one, led by Hyun Ho-seok, is that other government departments, such as the Ministry of Strategy and Finance and the Bank of Korea, are on the same page with Che on what kinds of policies should be made in order to diagnose the Korean economy.
Despite the record-breaking gains, Korean stocks recorded the lowest rate of earnings compared to 6 other emerging markets in Asia. The Kospi has risen less than 2% this year, a stark contrast to India's 23% and Taiwan's near 10% rise. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Korea logged a trade surplus for the 28th straight month in June. The Bank of Korea said Tuesday the country's trade surplus amounted to slightly over $7.9 billion last month, down nearly 13% or more than $1 billion from the previous month. The nation's trade balance has been in the black since March 2012, the second longest period since Korea posted 38 consecutive monthly surpluses in the late 1980s. Also, the trade balance in the first half of this year peaked at $39.2 billion, an all-time record and a 25% increase from the previous year. Exports of display panels and semiconductors both rose more than 10% in June from a year earlier. And Korea has confirmed another case of foot and mouth disease, signaling a spread of the highly infectious animal disease may have already begun. The Agriculture Ministry said Monday that a second outbreak was confirmed at a pig farm in Goryeo, Gyeongsang-Bukdo Province. Now, this comes just 4 days after the country confirmed its first outbreak of FMD in over 3 years at a pig farm in the nearby county of Uiseong. Quarantine authorities in the region have decided to cull 40 pigs that tested positive and place a temporary lockdown on animals and vehicles at the farm to prevent possible spreading of the disease. Korea's last outbreak in 2011 cost the economy billions of dollars and led to the culling of nearly 3.5 million animals. If Korean companies continue to pollute the environment at their current levels, they'll be forced to cough up a combined $2.2 billion in penalties by the year 2020. Now, that's the projection from local firm IM Investment and Securities, which estimated 1/10 of emissions totaling around $100. The government is instituting a carbon emissions trading system in January with hopes of cutting down greenhouse gases to 30% below their current levels by the year 2020. Currently, 38 countries, including Switzerland and New Zealand, have adopted similar measures.
Now, the monsoon season is pretty much behind us now in Korea, so we have to get ready for the intense summer heat over the next few weeks. Most summers, an unusually fierce heat wave will last a maximum of around 1 week in Korea, but experts warn global warming will make them much longer and the effects could be disastrous. Kim Min-ji reports.
It's very hot and humid compared to before, and there are a lot of tropical nights.
It has gotten much hotter. I visit Busan regularly, and it's the same down there. I can feel the humidity levels are high.
In Korea, heat wave warnings are issued when temperatures exceed 33 degrees Celsius for 2 straight days. Usually a heat wave lasts for 10 days on average in Korea, but experts warn that period could get much longer in the coming years. The Natural Disaster Management Institute says heat waves could last for at least 1 month by 2020, which could potentially lead to the deaths of thousands of people. Here's a possible scenario. During the first week, the heat will cause droughts, and in the second, the first fatalities will be reported. As the week progresses, the number of people succumbing to the heat will rise, and the prices of agricultural and farming products will surge. Into the fourth week, temperatures could rise above 40 degrees Celsius, threatening the lives of some 10,000 people. Transportation could also be disrupted as tires are liable to explode, and railway tracks can bend and buckle. In fact, in 1994, when the heat wave lasted for 30 days, over 3,000 more people died than average, and there were blackouts and a shortage of drinking water. Experts warn the damage could be worse now.
We will see problems in the farming sector due to a lack of water. In the manufacturing sector, power shortages will reduce the number of working days, which will hurt the economy overall.
The institute warns heat waves could linger for up to 50 days in 2050, but by then it could be too late to reverse the effects of global warming. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now on to some cultural news. A special photo exhibition about Korea's easternmost island of Dokdo has opened right here in Seoul. It's the work of celebrated photographer Kim Jung-man, and he's made the island his subject every season over the last 2 years. Park Ji-won reports.
From its breathtaking sunrises and the East Sea that surrounds it, to flocks of seagulls and the moon hovering above the horizon, this photo exhibition shows the many faces of Dokdo that may be foreign to those who haven't had the pleasure of visiting. Korea's celebrated photographer Kim Jung-man visited Korea's easternmost territory several times over the course of 2 years to capture the beauty of the island day and night at every season.
It is a great honor for a Korean photographer to be able to shoot the very place that represents the Korean spirit. This beautiful and sometimes lonely place has inherited various artistic meanings as well, with some literary and historical connotations.
Kim shot more than 20,000 photos, but settled on 55 works that depict the mysterious and humble island. All the photos will be donated to the Northeast Asian History Foundation, which first came up with the idea of the Dokdo exhibition.
People can now freely visit Dokdo, but they usually don't stay long enough to appreciate the diversity of the island. We'd like to show audiences various beautiful images of the islets.
The foundation hopes the exhibition helps to counter Japan's false claims to the island, an island that is not only Korean land, but also part of the Korean spirit. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Good afternoon, I'm Incheon with your weather update. Monsoon season is nearing an end, and actually we had a last round of monsoon showers this morning, and if it's still sprinkling in your areas, well, those rains should move out by the afternoon. Then the sun will come out, making for a steamy day. Temperatures are going to hover in the low 30s across the region, and discomfort index will rise as we head into the mid today. With that, here are the readings for today. The high in Seoul and Gwangju will rise to 31, while Daegu and Busan will climb to 32 and 29 respectively. Now for other regions, it looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon will top out at 30 and 31, and Dokdo should reach 27. Well, after the monsoon season is over, we have scorching days ahead of us, and the weather outlook for the remainder of the week is looking pretty hot. Temperatures will be rising to 33 degrees Celsius, but with the heat and sun, it's going to feel hotter than the actual temperatures. So let's prepare for the hotter days ahead. That's all for me today, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
Well, thank you, Jian, for that. And those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Jinju and I will be back at the same time on Wednesday. Until then, goodbye.